And ladies and gentlemen, with that, let me welcome onto the stage, back onto the platform, Dr. Precious Moloi-Motsepe, who will then welcome our guest this afternoon, Miss Sophie Williams-De Bruyn. Please give Dr. Precious a round of applause as she comes back up onto the stage, of course, for that fireside conversation. Thank you.
So, the moment is here. Mrs. Sophie De Bruyn, I call her Mom Sophie. I don't know what else to call her. She's special to all of us. I would do a disservice to her if I tried to give a formal introduction. And you all know her work. And that's why you all stood up when she came on stage. Mom Sophie, we appreciate you so much, and we love you. And I am so honored that you made time to be with us so we can learn from you. This is the moment that we've been waiting for. We're going to have a very private fireside chat, you and I, in your living room, and we're letting the audience just join us, okay? So this is just a chat between you and I.
Thank you so much for the introduction. And I need to say to everybody, I'm known as Mom Sophie, as Precious says, and also Aunt Sophie. So I want to say I'm everybody's Aunt Sophie. And I'm everybody's mom. If you want to call me Mom Sophie, you write me a WhatsApp or an email, you can say to me, Mom Sophie, my Auntie Sophie. I don't mind. And I love to be called Mom Sophie, Aunt Sophie. And I've got so many adopted daughters and sons because I've been a mother to all of them. And I'm everybody's Mom Sophie. In exile, where we lived for 2.5 decades with my family, I was a mother to all of those those of us who had children, and the young people who didn't have their children, their parents with them. We were the mothers of those children. So yes, Precious.
So I just want to know, I've got a beautiful picture in my office of Mom Sophie and her colleagues, young, bold, marching to Pretoria. And I treasure that picture in my office. And Mom Sophie, I want to know what was going through your mind as you and your colleagues were marching to Pretoria. What was going through your mind that day?
You know, one needs to look back.
Your mic, ma'am.
Sorry. One needs to take a step back and talk a little bit about that era. And there was all these laws impacting on the lives of women. Firstly, on the people, the black people of South Africa at that time, and then the women, most importantly, who had to bear the brunt of so many laws. Then comes this awful law, which was already promulgated, but wasn't yet put into action. And that was, as you know, the carrying of the passes for women. Our men had already taken the pass without much trouble. So the women got together, and it was mainly women that were already in the Congress movement, because we had a Congress movement of different races. You also know that during that time, there were all these laws, group areas laws, where people can't live together as a people. They had to live in groups, coloreds in their own areas, Indians in their areas, our African people in their areas, in the locations, and of course the white people in the suburbs. So the Congress movement had a women's league within the ANC, just like the Congress of Democrats, the White Alliance had their own women's group, and us, the Colored Congress, also had the colored women. Although the colored women were not, and the Indian women, of course, had the Indian Women's Congress. Of course, the colored women were not very well organized. They were just a bunch of people. But the long and the short is, these laws impacted on the lives of women. And there comes another law on top of all the others for women to carry passes, and they said, no, we're not going to carry passes, and that's where it all started. The organizing and the mobilizing over the months, and you can imagine, without any technology, there were no internet, there were no all these things that we have today, that makes our lives so much more comfortable. So how did we do it? How did we get 20,000 women together? I mean, 80,000 nowadays, up to actually 90,000 to 100 in stadiums are brought in by air-conditioned coaches with the lunch pack you get today, with the curtains in the coach, all the comforts are there. There was nothing like that for the women. Women, by their own steam, after they were mobilized and organized, and I remember that with Helen Joseph and late Mam Ngoyi, I was a young one, we went to Geberga. I was already in Johannesburg. I come from Geberga, as you all know. And there we went to just find out how the women were doing with the mobilizing and organizing. And it was early morning when we arrived there, and they waited for us, sitting around in a certain yard of one of the comrades, benches there ready for us. And we arrived, joined them, and it was also their branch meeting. And they reported. The secretary of the branch reported how far they've gone, what they did, and all of that. And then when it was time that they thought for a cup of tea, they collected a tikkie. In those days, it was pounds, shillings, and pence, sterling, as you remember. So a tikkie from all of us for a cup or a mug of coffee or tea. And then another tikkie for a scone. So it's a sixpence. And that's how they fundraised amongst themselves. And the others crochet, knitted little garments, sold it to one another and sold it to other people for fundraising towards going to Pretoria. The people, the women of Geberga, fundraised 90 pounds sterling for 2 coaches to take them to Pretoria. Those days we didn't have the 9 provinces we had. We only had the Transvaal, Natal, we had the Cape Province, and we had Orange Free State during that time. So these were the provinces. So from all those provinces, women did their own way of fundraising. Others slaughtered their chickens in their own backyards and cooked it and made a stew of it, and with mealie rice, a plate of mealie rice, chicken stew, their own chickens that they slaughtered, and they charged a shilling towards fundraising. I'm just trying to show how the women depended on nobody.
Yeah.
They came to Pretoria in taxis, in rundown bakkies, as we call them, and all manner of transport that brought them, plus the 2 coaches that brought the women from Port Elizabeth to Pretoria. No air-conditioned coaches, no free lunch packs waiting for them when they climbed into the coach. Nothing. They carried their own scarf tin. And in it was a piece of bread with a piece of fish, if you come from the coast. Others, a piece of pap with a piece of steak or whatever they could. That was their meager lunches that they carried to Pretoria. So this is how the women had that tenacity, that independence. There were no deep pockets that would give them funding, donations, nothing.
Yeah.
We knew nothing about donations that time. We used to hold concerts, and comrades used to come and participate in the concerts and fundraise like that. We had ordinary fundraising tactics.
Wow. Please, you have to clap for that. Here we are busy talking about financial inclusion, and the ladies were doing it for themselves back then. And that's the message today. Ladies, you have to do it for yourselves. That's very important. Again, Mom Sophie, I am very, aware of your time.
Yeah.
But what I want to know lastly, we have captains of industry in the audience, Bonolita Fagude, Teresa Clarks, Bonomonde Mabuya. These are captains of business and industry, and we have young women that are doing amazing things in the new economies. Have we come far as gender equality is concerned? What are the priorities that you would love to see, at least during your lifetime?
Before I, excuse me, before I answer that question, Precious, I need to give you the answer that you asked previously. And I said, let's go back a step. And you asked, how did I feel during that time when we stood in the amphitheater? I think the 4 of us stood in the amphitheater, and I looked at this vast army of women, 20,000 women. And I had a lump, I felt a lump. They were by that time sitting down on the green grass, the immaculate green lawn of the Union Building, and the building, every nook and cranny, all the windowsills were occupied, even on the roof, because never before had they seen so many black faces enter the Holy Grail, the Union Building. And as I looked over this vast army of women, I felt a lump in my throat.
Yeah.
And the tears began to start. And it is because the hard work we could see had paid off. It had paid off. Here are the women sitting all over the lawns with their babies lying on the grass. And it was such an emotional feeling of joy that we had succeeded. If you ask me how about 20, how do I know? How do we know? We are always saying 20,000 women. And I know we are short of time. But Mambertha Goa, if some of you remember, stood on the one side as a women march, and Mem Ruth Mompati stood on the other side. And as a women march, they gave their petitions to both of them. One, those on that side gave to Mambertha, the other one on, with the result that at the end, and they were all sitting down, Mam Ruth and Mambertha had counted their petitions, and they now reconciled the number. So it was 20,000. Wow. But there would have been more. There would have been more women than the 20,000, because some of them didn't know their way to the union buildings, and so they asked the police on the roads. And the police said, "Oh, you want to go to the union building? Yes, I'll show you." And they took some of them by the scruff of their neck and said, "The union buildings will show you," and pushed them instead into the vans to the police station, locked them up for the day, and only released them because they knew by the time they were released, they would be, the march would be over. Kept them there the whole day. So I think I've answered the question of how did I feel, Precious.
Yes, thank you. What do we need to do now?
Yes, we've come a long way.
Yeah.
We've got our government on our side that have promised a lot of things. We've got the Constitution on our side, which women can access. They can access the Constitution. All their needs are there. It's been made easy for them. But it's not easy. I mean, it doesn't happen like that. We've come a long way. We've got the vote. We've got almost a lot of things. But we are not satisfied because we don't see the changes in our situation as women. We need to, first of all, get ourselves educated. Education is most important, because if we are not educated, if our young women, our children, our girl child are not educated, they will not be in a position to understand some of the things that they should be doing for themselves. So education is a very, very important instrument, but we need to get our education better. Our education doesn't meet our standards at this point. We need to find out what has gone wrong with our educational system so that it can serve our people better. Right now it is said that our children can't read. Are we right? Can our children read? So that is one of the things that we need to do. We also need to organize ourselves. I think that we are working in silos. What the women of that time did, and I'm not saying that it will work for nowadays. Those were the olden days, and changes need to be done in the way we do our work. But what happened was that the women under the umbrella of the Federation of South African Women, FETSO it's called, gathered the different women groups. Like in the ANC, it was the African National Congress Women's League. It was a colored woman under the Colored People's Congress. It was the Indian women that were organized under the Indian Congress and the White Congress and so on. That's part of what it was. Then there were the church women that were organized. Then there were the trade union women, women of the trade unions, the different trade unions, they were organized. And the Stokvels were even organized during that time. And the women that had their own little groups, like women that did sewing and so on and so forth. So all these women were brought together under one umbrella, and that was the umbrella of the Federation of South African Women. So unless we are all, thank you. So we work in little groups, in silos, and we're doing magnificent work. I would like to congratulate every organization, every little group, big or small, and women and young people that do wonderful, wonderful things that people are not aware of. They do fantastic things, and they are unsung. So these, and it's going to take a lot of work, and it's going to take years, not in my lifetime, maybe not in some of our lifetimes as we are sitting here, but it needs to be done. One great, gigantic army of women should be organized, come together, strategize, mobilize, organize, so that we understand that what is happening is not correct, cannot go on forever. And the word that we normally say, enough is enough, we must go beyond that and say this far and no further. We need to also get women that are already in politics to understand that they must speak up in Parliament for the women, that they are not there for their own glorification. They are there for the people of South Africa, and as women, they should look at the needs and fight in Parliament for the needs of the women. And also our women that are already masters of industry, or captains of industry rather. Those captains of industry must support. They must support projects and programs for women, and they must support one another. The thing about women sometimes is pulling one another down. We also need to stay away from toxic friendships. We need to help one another. If we hear amongst us that somebody is talking about somebody which is not very nice, we should not be also entertaining that conversation, pulling that person down. We should steer away the conversation from being toxic or pulling down the person that is being spoken of. Let us support one another in every possible way that we can, whether it's socially, politically, spiritually, in the churches, wherever. Let's support one another. Let's be more friendlier to one another and kinder to one another. Let's be more kinder to one another. So those are some of the things that we can prioritize for the moment. There are others, but for the moment, those are some of the things.
Thank you, Mama Sophie. So you heard it. Education, critically important. And when we meet like this, we are also educating one another, but we have to go beyond this. Collaboration, very, very important. And Mama Sophie, I'm sure you saw on your concept paper, we've got women from the IWFSA, BBC, and Women's Business Women's Association. We've got Rural Women Association here. We have women represented from different organizations. We've got women from Namibia, Zambia, that are here with us today. So we are talking about collaborations. And I think you also mentioned the fact that we need to be compassionate to one another. The PhD syndrome, phansi, PhD syndrome. We don't want to see that. We're not that type of people. It's important that women in business, women in politics, women in NGOs, whatever sector we are, we need to be supporting one another. And I really love how you explain how you started this march on your own without cell phones, without WhatsApp messages, and you did it. This is one thing I think I cannot really wrap around my head. Really, really big kudos to you. That was really incredible. Can we have another round of applause for Mom Sophie? Yeah.
Please.